also had an extraordinary donor who donated to the New School Arts Foundation to make this evening possible. And if you could also maybe give a big hand to Gil Cook, who is As I said, the New School Arts Foundation exists to create an awareness about architecture and the potential to build better communities. We're co-sponsors of a lecture. I'm going to mention two quick lectures. Put in your notebook. Next Wednesday, the 2nd, ANFA, the Academy for Neuroscience in Architecture, is presenting the first of its new series at the Museum of Contemporary Art downtown. It's Wednesday, this coming, 6 o'clock. Go on the website, just Google ANFA. I'm not going to give you any more details. It's a wonderful lecture, and in fact, Gil Cook will be one of the presenters that evening. A week later, the 9th, at the New School Auditorium, we're going to have Shane Rolfe, who's going to talk to us about zero net energy design. So that's at the school. It's the 9th. It's a Wednesday. It's part of our regular program, so please join us there. So finally, to introduce our very special guest this evening, I want to introduce probably the hardest working guy at the New School. Maybe, yeah, I think he works harder than Steve Altman even. He is the reason we have such an esteemed guest here this evening, and so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the president of the AIAS, Mr. Alan Gaida.
I'll make this long. Originally, how this all happened, I guess, I just won the election for the AIAS, and one of the things that we were tasked with our board is to really get the students excited and pumped, not only about architecture, but just about their career choice and just about the awesome school that we go to. It's no secret that NSAD is going through a transitional phase, so I thought, why not contact the yes man himself, Bjarke Ingels. Oh, sorry. Thank you. If you look on the back of Yes is More, Bjarke Ingels calls himself the yes man. He's known as the yes man. I thought that was very inspiring. And I knew that when I asked him to come speak here, he couldn't say no. So that worked out well. Anyway, let's get on with it. Ingels studied architecture at the Royal Academy in Copenhagen, and then went on to Barcelona, receiving his diploma in 1998. As a third-year student, he set up his first practice and won his first competition. From 1998 to 2001, he worked for the Office of Metropolitan Architecture at Rem Koolhaas in Rotterdam. Ingels was awarded the European Prize for Architecture in 2010, the Golden Lion at the Venice Biennale in 2004 for the Stavanger Concert House, and the Forum AID Award for the VM Houses in 2005. NSAD, I proudly present to you Bjarke Ingels.
Thanks. It's an honor to be here.
Sounds like Arnold.
Sort of in the urban setting of the movie Top Gun. And Alan promised to take me to Miramar tomorrow, so I can experience it with my own eyes. I put on this this slide that sort of depicts how we sort of try to diagram the ecosystem of the project we did some years ago, and I'd like to show it as a sort of reminder that I believe that architects, rather than sort of designing two-dimensional facades or sort of three-dimensional architectural objects, we ought to be designers of ecosystems, systems of both economy and ecology, where we actually sort of channel the flow not only of sort of people through our cities and buildings, but also of resources through our sort of the ecology of our cities. And one of the reasons that this is sort of a relevant sort of a perspective for architects is because of this photo. It was taken at the COP15, the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in Copenhagen, a bit more than a year ago. And as you can see from the atmosphere on the photo, it wasn't exactly a party. Check out Sarkozy, Brown, Merkel, even Obama looks pretty depressed. It was a complete failure. Like none of the sort of the goals that have been stated as targets for the meeting were met, because what happened was that sort of the whole discussion about sustainability drowned in this sort of general understanding that sustainability is a question of how much of our existing quality of life are we prepared to sacrifice in order to afford becoming sustainable. It's almost like this sort of moral burden we have to bear, or like this sort of, I'm from Denmark, so we call it sort of this sort of Protestant idea that it has to hurt to do good. So if everybody thinks that sustainable life is less fun than normal life, it's a pretty unattractive position for sustainability. So when we were asked to do the Danish pavilion for the Shanghai World Expo, we thought that maybe we could come up with a new kind of sustainability, namely a sort of a sustainability where sort of sustainable cities and buildings actually increase the quality of life. We also thought to ask what could Denmark possibly sort of teach the Chinese, one of the biggest countries in the world, one of the smallest. China symbolized by the great dragon. In Denmark we have a national bird. China has many great poets, but in their public school curriculum they have 3 fairy tales by Hans Christian Andersen, or Antushun as they call him, which means that all 1.3 billion Chinese grew up with the story of the Little Mermaid. It's almost like a fragment of Danish culture that has been embedded into Chinese culture. The biggest tourist attraction in China is the Great Wall, reportedly visible from outer space. In Denmark, it's the Little Mermaid. It's like hardly visible from the canal to us. And it's kind of indicative of the differences between, Shanghai and Copenhagen are both port cities, but of completely different scales and sort of urban attributes. But if you look at recent urban developments, this is a Shanghai street 30 years ago, bicycles everywhere. Now you have traffic jams everywhere. Bicycles have even become forbidden in many places to not disturb the free flow of the automobile. Meanwhile, in Copenhagen, we're actually expanding our bicycle lanes. Recently, they counted that 37% of the Copenhageners actually commute by bike. We have a system of free bicycles, the city bikes, that people can actually borrow if they visit the city. So we thought, why don't we remind the Chinese of what they knew so well 30 years ago, namely how cool it is to ride a bike through the city instead of sitting in a traffic jam or looking endlessly for a parking spot. So we conceived of the pavilion as a sort of a loop of a Danish street, complete with benches and the blue bicycle lanes of Copenhagen, and the city bikes. You can even sort of bicycle on the roof, but also through the exhibition itself. Practice what you preach. Also, I mentioned that Shanghai and Copenhagen are both port cities, but in Copenhagen our harbor water has become so clean that you can swim in it. One of our first designs was the Copenhagen harbor bath that sort of extends public life into the water, and essentially, again, sort of just by making a cleaner city, you don't have to commute 2 hours by train or bus to go to the beach. You can actually just jump in the port. So we thought, why don't we allow the visitors to the pavilion to sort of experience this this sort of phenomenon. So at the Harbor Pavilion, we created this sort of a harbor bath that allows the visitors to experience how clean, if not how cold, the Danish harbor water is. It also serves as the view for the conference spaces in the basement of the pavilion. And in the middle of this sort of a piece of Copenhagen harbor surrounded by the bicycles, we propose to place the Little Mermaid. Not a copy of the mermaid, but the actual mermaid. When the Danish equivalent of the Tea Party heard about this, they tried to sort of pass a law specifically against moving the mermaid. And for the first time in my life, I was invited to speak at the public parliament. And as you can see, we got her. Chinese customs. And there she is in the middle of the pavilion. In her place, we invited the Chinese artist Ai Weiwei to make an art installation. And what he did is that he installed a security camera. It's the same brand of security camera that the Chinese state has installed in front of his house. Because he's a kind of very system-critical artist, so they like to keep an eye on him. But this camera actually transmits a live image to a giant flat screen that he installed where the mermaid normally sits. So when the tourists would go in vain, they would see that at least she was okay.